With the new featured exotic armors list comes fresh builds, and with it, some that are whack and some that are wild. So let's talk about Ballidorse Wrathweavers. Before working on this video, I had never equipped Ballidorse, but now that I've given them a spin around the block, I think this might be my most slept on exotic in the game. When they were released, I had written them off after reading the description as being this sort of pseudo-support option that would only function during your super and would only benefit your teammates, but I'm happy to report that my assumptions were completely wrong. It sort of snuck in there right in the middle of the description, but both the frost armor and the damage boost is activated for you and your allies when you use the frost pulse aspect, which for me was a total game changer. I think the reason for that confusion and why I slept on Ballidorse for so long is that there's a lot of different interactions in the game that use the word allies in their description, but it's in a rather vague way, and in Ballidorse's case, it made me think it couldn't be used in a solo setting. The term allies is often so hit or miss that even just on Ballidorse, there's two sections that are both described as being activated when you interact with your allies, but one of them includes you, and the other one doesn't. When you use Frost Pulse, you gain that damage boost in Frost Armor, but you don't get the super energy. While I don't care that that's the case, it would be nice if the language was a little bit clearer so people didn't have to test these types of things, and just making it say you and your allies in range of your pulse would have made it perfectly clear on how the whole exotic functions. Anyways, nitpicking aside, the way Ballidorse works is that whenever you do the pulse from your super or cast a rift while using the Frost Pulse aspect, both you and your allies within the radius gain max stacks of Frost Armor as well as a Stasis weapon boost. You get a ×4 boost from the Super Pulse and a ×2 boost from Frost Pulse, so you get some extra functionality for your super, but it mostly just gives you a really consistent and impactful neutral game option. Stasis itself also has a lot of great synergies that allow for substantial ability regeneration, so with Ballidorse and Frost Pulse, you'll be able to have 100% uptime on those rifts. Paired with the new class stat giving you an overshield on top of ×8 Frost Armor, you not only get the incredible crowd control that Stasis is known for, but high survivability without sacrificing any of that damage or CC, which is not so common for Stasis. There's a few specifics that make things tick, so let's go over my exact build so I can highlight why everything works so great together and why I think this might be one of the most underrated builds in the game. For aspects, Frost Pulse not only lets Ballidorse do its thing, but it also adds in class ability regeneration whenever you freeze combatants, which should be essentially constantly when you combine it with the other aspect, Ice Flare Bolts. Whenever you enter combat, you can slide in with your rift to freeze nearby enemies and start the chain, which can get you a rift back in as little as 5 freezes, which will likely be way before your rift runs out. For fragments, adding in Whisper of Bonds means you'll also be able to generate orbs off of those frozen targets, which can get you some super regeneration, but also if you use an insulation mod, it can get you to that next rift even faster. You could also use Whisper of Refraction, which gets you class energy when you kill slowed or frozen targets, but honestly I found it so fast to generate a rift purely from Frost Pulse that I didn't think it was necessary. I went with Whisper of Rending and Whisper of Fissures to increase both the damage I dealt to frozen targets as well as my shatter damage, and I also went with Whisper of Rime to increase my Frost Armor stacks. For the exotic weapon, there's two that I was going back and forth between, which were Wicked Implement and Verglass Curve. I think both are perfect for this build and both work really well with this season's artifact mods, but Wicked is great for longer range engagements and Verglass is a lot better for medium and even closer range since the crystals help with clearing crowds. Also, I know it's pronounced Verglaw, but I failed French class, so to save us both the agony of the 20 times I'll probably have to say it, I'm just going to call it Verglass. Another benefit of Verglass is that it can freeze immediately with a well-placed crystal, and you can even freeze multiple enemies at once, whereas Wicked can only freeze one target at a time, and it takes a lot longer. If you're targeting a lower health enemy or something like a Vex that's harder to land precision hits on, you'll be freezing a lot less consistently, which can slow your rift generation and kind of throw a wrench into things. It's not as big of a deal if you've got Ice Flare Bolts and Headstone going to already spread freeze, but Verglass also works really well to spread those chains, and it freezes far more consistently and spawns way more crystals for higher damage potential. With that all being said, I think Wicked is probably the safer option, but Verglass is definitely the more fun one. For the artifact mods, the standouts for me are one with Frost, which increases your reload speed with Frost Armor, and Frigid Glare, which will cause a freezing burst on precision kills if you have Frost Armor. Since Ballidorse nets you pretty much constant max stacks of Frost Armor, these two will always be active, cranking your freezing and reload up way higher. With Verglass, you'll also always have its Catalyst active, so your draw time will also speed up, which paired with one with Frost lets you loose arrows lightning quick. Semi-Auto Striker is also a fantastic pick here since Wicked or Verglass can activate your armor charges from a distance with precision hits, and if you're using Verglass, I'd recommend Argent Quiver to net some extra damage since it's a 33% boost. It takes 3 precision hits to get an armor charge stack from Semi-Auto Striker, which is perfect since you get 3 shots of the buff from Argent Quiver, which is called Godslayer Broadheads. For my armor set, Bushido pairs amazingly well with Verglass since shattering its crystals will activate the set bonus healing, and damaging those crystals also activates and resets Bushido's resist timer, as you can see here. This will add another layer of damage resist on top of frost armor to keep you alive, and it'll also help to top up your health along the way. For Wicked Implement, I stuck with Bushido since I was reloading pretty frequently, so I felt it was working fine, but I was also using a crossbow on both loadouts, and it was nice to get the damage resistance while I was DPSing. As an alternative, you could try something like a 2-set Smoke Jumper for the damage resist off of your orbs, and a 2-set of 2-fold Crown so you can get some extra health off of ammo drops. For stats, I'd highly recommend putting as much as you can into class since at 200, you can get a full bar of Overshield when you drop your Rift, which is amazing. As soon as you drop that Rift, Frost Armor and Overshield will both activate, which gives you a massive boost to your damage resistance, but since the Rift also starts healing you right away, that Overshield means your health can build back up, even if you're taking damage, which is huge. I used a mix of Specialist and Gunner Armor to get my class stat to 160, so with 2 class fonts I could get that max health Overshield, and I could also keep my weapon stat as high as possible. For armor mods, Dynamo is a great pick since you'll be trying to use your Rift close to enemies anyways to apply your freeze, and that'll crank your super generation. You can probably avoid Stasis reload mods if you're using one with Frost, and since I didn't feel like I needed any extra class regen, I went with reload mods for my special weapon instead. Powerful Attraction is also great to scoop up any extra orbs lying around while you slide in dropping rifts. The only other thing I'd suggest is to not use Stasis Surge mods since they don't stack with the damage boost you get from Ballidorse, and since you'll almost always have that up, it's a bit of a waste. So instead I went with Weapon Surges since those stack just fine and it nets me a 180 weapon stat at max. For my other weapons, I went with a Beacon Rounds Jolting Feedback Unfall, which I absolutely love, and is a double champ stun for overloads and unstops. And I was also using a Submersion with auto-loading Chill Clip, since I just can't put it down, and it's also a double champ for barriers and overloads. I'm really surprised by this build, because by all accounts, it does it all, and it feels extremely fun while doing it. You get loads of crowd control, an insane amount of damage resistance and survivability, constant ability uptime, high damage output with a boost to your stasis weapons. It's great for crowds or single target damage, and it's a triple champ stunner. I've found myself drawing a lot of comparisons between Ballidorse and Rhymecoat since that's been my go-to stasis option for ages, but one of the glaring weaknesses of using Rhymecoat on stasis is its low survivability. You need to add things like Rhyme Stealer in to access Frost Armor, and I also usually ran it with Buried Bloodline to get Devour since I didn't want to rely on my Rift for healing. While it's possible to build around the Rift, I usually was focusing on my grenade stat, and I'd not only lose out on the Overshield, but not using Frost Pulse meant that Rift regeneration was drastically reduced, and it was not reliable or consistent. Ballidorse manages to bake all of those things directly into the subclass, while still giving you nearly just as good crowd control and damage as Rhymecoat. It doesn't necessarily have the range and versatility that a Bleak Watcher does, but I don't think it needs to since it offers a more close quarters and in the fray type of playstyle, which I found myself really enjoying. There's a lot of activities like battlegrounds or even expeditions where you can be completely surrounded by enemies, and Ballidorse feels amazing in those situations. With everything in this build combined, survivability gets cranked up so high that you can stand your ground in almost any situation, and you apply so much freeze your enemies will be hard pressed to contest you in the first place. Verglass really ties everything together for me since overall I think it's an absolute blast of an exotic, but it adds in even more ways to freeze, even more ways to damage and clear crowds with crystals, and even more survivability when you pair it with Bushido. I'm overall extremely surprised by Ballidorse, as going in, I thought they were a really niche and unexciting exotic that just didn't offer much, but I've come out the other side stunned at how incredible and fun they are to use. I think Ballidorse is neck and neck with Rhymecoat for the best Stasis Warlock exotic, and it might be one of the best, most well-rounded exotics on the entire class. I'll absolutely be going back to it a lot going forward, and I'm glad to finally not be sleeping on such a fantastic exotic. So with that being said, it's easy to say that Ballidorse Wrathweavers are absolutely, unquestionably wild. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. There's a dim link down below if you want to give this exact build a try, or if you want to use it as a base for your own spin on it. Subscribe to the channel to keep an eye out for more videos soon, and let me know in the comments what you think of Ballidorse Wrathweavers.